You are now very active in the gun debate here in Florida. You know, there was a shooting, and the state legislature, I think, very hastily passed some legislation. You know, I think a lot of people know, but they raised the age limit. You got to be 21 now. They adopted these red flag laws. You know, different policies. What are your thoughts on these policies, and what are you doing to advance your opinion on this?
Yes, it was shortly after the Parkland shooting that took place, a tragic situation. That was just horrible. And it was a mob just descended on the Capitol shortly after that, demanding government do something. And whenever government does something based on emotion, they tend to make mistakes, huge mistakes, and they did in this case. They trampled completely on the Florida and U.S. Constitution. As you said, someone under the age of 21 can't purchase a weapon. Now, what's ironic about that is an 18-year-old can go off and fight and defend our country, and they're given a weapon. But when they come back home, let's say they're 20, they can't in Florida. Or this young man is being deployed. He leaves a wife and a young child. The wife is 19, 20 years old. She's defenseless. That doesn't even make sense. So that was a very egregious part of that law. That would have been enough to stop it right there. But they went even further. They said a ban on bump stocks. A bump stock is a modification you can put on your gun to make it fire faster. The problem is the bump stock definition was so broad that any modification you would make to your gun could make it illegal, such as even putting a new trigger on it would make it illegal. Then they had what was called a 3-day waiting period, where you go purchase a weapon, you had to wait 3 days before you can pick it up. Now, the irony of that is we tried to pass in Florida that for a woman to have an abortion, she had to have a 1-day waiting period. That was challenged in court as being unconstitutional. There was no way you could do it. And it put that law on hold for about 3 years. It wasn't until just recently where an appellate court overturned and said, yes, you can have a 24-hour waiting period. But they put in a gun bill a 3-day waiting period to take away your constitutional rights. And then finally, it was the red flag laws, or what I call correctly, the gun confiscation laws, where it says that if someone has deemed to be mentally unstable or in a position where they may hurt themselves or others, that the government can come and confiscate their weapons from them. And since that was enacted in Florida, close to 2,000 Floridians have had their guns confiscated from them. And there have been mistakes, there have been wrong things that have been done to citizens, law-abiding citizens in Florida. But what makes it even more dangerous is I've had veteran groups come to me. Florida has a large veteran population, and where I am in the Panhandle, an even larger veteran population because there are so many military bases here. And a veteran group came to me and says, Mike, the danger we are seeing right now is that our young men, when they come back from a combat situation, back into a home state here in Florida, that sometimes they are diagnosed with PTSD, some form of it. It could be very mild or it could be more sincere. But these young men and women are reluctant to go and get the treatment they need because they're afraid that they'll be red flagged and that their weapon will be confiscated and they won't be able to buy one in the future. So that is creating a very dangerous situation. Now, all 4 of those things that I mentioned, which were in that bill, I filed legislation to repeal those. There were other parts of that law which were good, which I think need to remain, such as hardening of our schools, making the schools safer, providing funding for resource officers to be in every school, well-trained and responsive resource officers. That part is going to remain, but the portions that infringed upon our constitutional rights, then that was to be repealed. So I filed legislation to do that.
Fantastic. And what do the prospects look like? I mean, is there kind of a sense in the legislature that, oops, maybe we went too quick with this law? I mean, I know a lot of the citizens, at least that I talk to, are very upset with this legislation, especially among Republicans and conservatives. We have a Republican legislature. And it sounds like the governor would be open to some modifications and some repealing. But what is the sense in the legislature?
Well, right now, candidly, it doesn't look too good. I presented that legislation last session, which ended this past March, and it didn't move. It didn't really get a hearing at all. I filed it again for this session, and if last session was any indication, it's going to be tough. Despite that, I don't think that I'm Don Quixote chasing windmills. Again, my oath of office said I would protect and defend the Constitution. Mm-hmm. So if I have any fidelity to my oath at all, I must file legislation when I see our Constitution, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth, the Fifth, the 14th Amendment, all of those were being violated by that Parkland law, then I'm duty bound to file legislation to repeal it. So let's hope that more members of the legislative body will remember their oath, they'll recognize their oath, and they'll come around and let's repeal that unconstitutional Parkland law.
Fantastic. And what else is on your mind, Representative Hill? What do you think about when you think about the state of Florida, when you think about the United States? What are the big issues? What can average citizens do? Anything that I didn't ask about that you wanted to talk about?
Sure. Right now, I think it's recognized that the United States is in turmoil. Mm-hmm. And it's at a crossroads. We are now in a battle for the soul of this nation, and we're seeing it on many different levels, on many different fronts. And I think one way that what American citizens need to start doing in Florida and elsewhere is to not be complacent and to go to work, come home, eat dinner, watch TV, go to sleep, get up and go to work, when there are those on the left who have it within their thought process that they want to fundamentally change America, and if that means bringing it down first, that's what they want to do. Now, I'm not encouraging those on the right to go out and behave like Antifa or the rest of them, but to stand up, let your voice be heard, let your elected officials at the school board level to get the pornography out of our schools, at the county administrative level, at the state level. Start being that voice, because I firmly believe that there are enough people of good character, there are enough Christians in our state, in our nation, that if they stood up and made their voice heard, we would make a big difference.
Amen. Well, Representative Hill, thank you so much for everything you're doing. It's been really a pleasure to speak with you. Let's please keep in touch, and just thanks again for all the great work you're doing.
Well, Alex, thank you. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.